Gathering voices, building worlds. The Ampliverse.
Welcome to Harry Potter and the Anxious Millennials, a show where we delve week by week into each chapter of the Harry Potter series.
Ready.
Hello, Ari.
Hello.
How art thou?
Great, just great.
Love.
Ready to talk about this chapter. I'm gonna tell you all about the Sorting Hat's new song, y'all.
Girl,
don't you worry.
This isn't just a song. This is like the Iliad. Like the hat went off. It was so long. I was like,
she was inspired by Tolkien songs in Lord of the
Yes.
Rings that like will sometimes go on for 3
Yes.
pages, and you're like, why is this still going?
for sure, very that.
Shocking.
Well, this week we read chapter 11 called The Sorting Hat's New Song. Ari, what happens in this chapter?
Adam.
Adam.
Adam returns to
Adam.
Hogwarts. Harry returns to Hogwarts. Here's the Sorting Hat's new song. And should I include the last bit? Harry returns to Hogwarts and here's the Sorting Hat's new song.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say is Umbridge is revealed as the defense against the dark arts teacher, but
okay,
that's neither here nor there, really.
Yeah, but yeah, that's true. We do find out who the new fine arts,
the new fine arts teacher. I love Umbridge as my orchestra teacher.
So right away, the chapter starts with Harry like not being really psyched that him and Luna are having the same hallucination or whatever's happening. He doesn't mention to anyone that Luna can also see, like he's not alone and Luna can also see them.
Mm-hmm.
But when they're riding together in the carriages with Luna,
Mm-hmm.
and Ginny mentions Grubbly Plank and is like, did anyone else see that Grubbly Plank woman's back? To which Luna responds, oh yeah, thank God, because Hagrid's not a very good teacher. I love that she just like does not hesitate too. Like she's like, oh yeah, because he's trash.
Yeah, I mean, she is a Ravenclaw still.
But like it's very on par that the Ravenclaws apparently think that Hagrid is like not a very good teacher. They think he's a bit of a joke.
We may have had similar conversations on this podcast.
Yeah. I'm like, you're not alone, girl. Like that's, yeah. And also I just feel like that is Hufflepuffs would think that. I mean, sorry, Ravenclaws would think that.
Go back and see our chapter 4 or our book 4 chapter where Grubbly Plank shows up and does unicorns, and Ari was like foaming at the mouth, hoping that she would be there.
Yeah. She was the best. And we're going to get some great animals in this book because she's there.
Yeah.
My favorite bit about this, though, was that everyone tried to defend Hagrid except Hermione.
Yeah.
Hermione was like, oh, I mean, he's great.
He's a professor. Totally.
Yeah, he teaches here.
Critics rave. He's a teacher.
Yeah, he is on the teacher's payroll. So they reach the Hogwarts castle and Harry's like craning his neck to see if there's any lights on at Hagrid's cabin, to which sure enough there are not. And then he like almost like begrudgingly turns back around to just take one last look at what we don't know what they are yet. So the skeletal horses.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts pondering why. Why is he now seeing them? Why did he not see them before? How come not everyone else can see them?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is the reason? What was the reason?
Yeah.
So then they head into the Great Hall. And of course, as per usual, even more so than usual, maybe, people are whispering about Harry as he walks by. And Harry just tries to ignore it. So very on par for Lavender and Parvati, I'd say.
100%.
Just as Harry comes up, they're like, oh, hi!
Oh my God!
Hi!
We weren't talking
Harry!
about you just now.
Oh my God, it's so good to see you. How are you? Did you have a good summer? How are you doing? Like, just so obviously, like, just finished.
I mean, I
being
would
like,
say this would be the most exciting day to like come back to Hogwarts to see all your friends
because of the drama.
The drama is happening in the like actual wizarding world. It's not just like school drama anymore. Now it's like in the Daily Prophet. So you can be like, whole summer, all I kept seeing was that like Harry Potter is like a lunatic. I have to talk. I can't
Dumbledore's
wait
lost
to
his
see
marbles,
Lavender and talk
Harry
about
Potter
it.
is a joke.
Yes.
Yeah. So Harry just kind of like shrugs that off, goes back to searching for Hagrid. Harry is desperate to find Hagrid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, all right, girl. Sure enough, he is not at the professors or the staff. He's not at the staff table. So then they kind of start talking about why he's not there. And it's suggested essentially that he probably isn't finished with whatever the mission was that Dumbledore gave him.
Right.
So they're like, oh, he probably just didn't finish his quest from Dumbledore.
Right.
That's got to be it. That's got to be it. And then Hermione's like, who is that? Who is that? Harry looks and sees someone that looks like your maiden aunt. Adam, what does this mean?
I don't know.
Do you know what that means? Isn't maiden younger? Isn't Umbridge older?
I think a maiden
Wouldn't
aunt
she be more
is an
matron?
aunt. I think a maiden aunt is someone who's not married, like matron of honor versus maid of honor.
Yeah, okay. Sure.
So it's a
once again, why do we have all these different words to say if a woman is married or not?
But also, like,
men just
it's
get
specifically a dig at women who haven't gotten married yet.
Yes.
Which is like, Joe, what is this?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Did you know, Adam, fun fact, do you know where the term spinster comes from?
Aurora's spinning wheel.
Sleeping Beauty. Obviously. The word spinster came from a woman who became independent from like spinning her own wool, and like she could sell her wool or whatever it was that she was making. And so she was independent. And people would say,
that's
like,
disgusting.
You're going to end up an old spinster. Like, it was a bad thing.
Yeah, awful.
I was like, that sounds great,
and
girl.
We're in agreement here on this podcast. Women should not be independent.
I'm just like, I don't understand. Like, that sounds great. That's exactly what I want to do in the old days.
Be your own boss.
So, girl.
Boss babe.
Yes. Hey, girl, boss. So yeah, it's none other than Umbridge.
Mm-hmm.
Harry's like, that's that Umbridge woman. She works for Fudge. Hermione is like, she works for Fudge. And then she immediately guesses why Umbridge is there. But I love that Harry like isn't bothered enough.
Yeah.
To be like, okay, why is she here?
It's so obvious.
He doesn't care. It's so weird. But I think it's because Harry's just like, I don't know.
Dummy.
He's just in his own world. Yeah. He's a dummy.
I know if we were reading this from Hermione's perspective, she would be like, oh, and then clearly this is the new Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher. She doesn't know who she is yet, right? She didn't go to the hearing.
No.
But she's clearly would look at that table and be like,
she'd be like, that's obviously why she's here.
Right.
Yeah. So, the first years are all led in by Grubbly Plank. And pretty immediately, the Sorting Hat sings its new song. I'm not going to read
all of
this entire
Yeah, please
passage.
don't. Thank you.
I won't. I will not be doing that.
I will be singing it.
Oh my gosh. It literally is 3 pages total, essentially, in my book.
Even in my book, I was like, I had to flip the page. And my book is...
Oh my God. Yeah,
huge.
I would like to read, as a Hufflepuff, I would like to read. Adam, do you know what I'm gonna touch on? Can you guess what I want to talk about? I'm like really curious what you're gonna say to this. Okay. So they're all talking about how together they're gonna build this school and teach these students, right? That's what they're all singing about, or what the hat is singing about. That's what they're all talking about.
And the hat is canonically they, them. Non-binary king. Queen.
Yeah. They, them, Joe. So Slytherin will teach just those whose ancestry is purest. Said Ravenclaw will teach those whose intelligence is surest.
Yeah. Fine.
Said Gryffindor will teach all those with brave deeds to their name. Said Hufflepuff, I'll teach the lot and treat them all the same.
Say that.
Girl, I'm sorry. Why are we not talking about how great a founder Hufflepuff is?
Right.
Why is Hufflepuff it is so crazy to me. I'm like, she's the one that's like equity.
Yes. Exactly.
We're gonna have equity here.
Exactly.
And everyone's like, no, only the smart kids. Gryffindor is like only the bravest.
Yes.
Gryffindor.
It is funny.
What brave things are these 11-year-olds doing? Like, I just am like, they are 11. What do you mean they need to be brave? Like, they're 11.
I totally forgot this song. I forgot how fucking long it was when I was reading it. I was like, my God.
It's long.
Put a cork in it, bud. But then also
put a cork in it, hat.
But also, I forgot that this is like it ends with a warning, but it's really about the hat being like, I don't think we should be doing Hogwarts like this. But no one listen. He's literally like, we shouldn't be separating in houses. This is fucking stupid. Which is what I think we've said on this podcast. Like, you shouldn't like, I don't know. You shouldn't be in a specific. You shouldn't be like at the age of 11 defined by one trait, and then the rest of your life you have like a whole like preconceived set of notions about people based on like what house they were in at the age of 11.
Right. So it's crazy to me. Obviously, I'm like, it really is crazy to me that Gryffindor is like, okay, first off, Slytherin just like literally is a racist. Like, he's just a racist.
Open.
That's like, at this point, she's like locking that in.
Yeah.
So later, it says, for instance, Slytherin took only pureblood wizards of great cunning, just like him, and those of sharpest mind were taught by Ravenclaw, while the bravest and boldest went to daring Gryffindor. Good Hufflepuff, she took the rest and taught them all she knew. Okay, you literally just said that Hufflepuff House was like essentially leftovers. Like, I reject that first off, not just as a Hufflepuff, but I'm like, you couldn't find one positive trait. Do you see what I'm saying, Adam? Like, and even with Slytherin, like, I'm just like, okay, I know you're saying cunning, but like, you're literally just saying like he only wants pureblood wizards and that's all he cares about. And so then we're going to go, this is even a little further down into this. So what you're telling me then at this point is Godric Gryffindor was not a good person because his best friend was Salazar Slytherin, who was essentially like a white supremacist. And the only reason they stopped being friends was just because like they personally had a falling out, not because he was racist.
I mean, like, it sets up the like there is like a duality with the Grindelwald Dumbledore like friendship also. Yeah. So that's important. But yes,
I mean, it's just. It really is. I'm not saying that like a good person can't be friends with like someone that's a bad. That happens all the time. Right. That happens all the time. But like, it's just crazy to me that I'm like, Gryffindor is seen as like this ideal, like the perfect man, perfect founder, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I really don't think he is. Especially if this was like his bestie.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing I will say is that the books are set up from Harry, who is a Gryffindor's perspective, and most of the people he interacts with are Gryffindors.
Right. So there's that like bias kind of setup anyway.
I'm sure that the other houses have their own specific like pride of like, well, we're the best house for this, that, and the other. But it does feel like the overarching narrative of the series is like Gryffindor was the best house because its founder was like the pure, like the fact that it's Gryffindor's sword that he pulls out of the hat in book 2. Like there's like just this whole thing of like Gryffindor is the house that really is the one that you want to be in. And as like, I mean, as a kid, it worked. I was like, I wanted to be a Gryffindor so bad.
I wanted to be a Gryffindor. Yeah.
But I do like re-examining it now as an adult. It is fully like Hufflepuff is the best. Hufflepuff is the most important house because
she'll treat everyone equally. Right. She's not gonna like be like, oh, you're not smart. Well,
then, okay, so then I had a question about, so the Sorting Hat is, let's say, programmed, because there's not really another word for what the Sorting Hat does. Sorting Hat is basically programmed to pick students, place students in houses based on what the founder of the house wanted. So I'm assuming he's programmed to only put pureblood. There has to have never, ever been a non-pureblood in Slytherin. Although that can't be true either.
Voldemort.
Because Voldemort.
Yeah.
So then my question revolving Hufflepuff is like,
just because he's not a mudblood?
Does he cycle through all three houses? And then if he's like, well, they're not really that smart, they're not really that brave, and they're like half blood, so I guess Hufflepuff. Like there's no actual defining characteristic of Hufflepuff, so he just throws the rest there.
Yes. It is so crazy that she wrote that. Like, I'm like, you couldn't have, you're the one that has, you have these certain qualities that you've said for Hufflepuff already, like loyalty or just that they're like genuinely good people, like very kind, like good hearted, whatever, like that type of energy. I'm just like, you could have said that. It's so weird to be like, oh yeah. And then she just took whoever else was left.
Well, unfortunately, Joe only thinks in binary, so.
It's like, it's crazy to me that was actually said, because I'm like, okay, you're giving away that you yourself are writing Hufflepuff essentially to be like it's like brave people go to Gryffindor, smart people go to Ravenclaw, purebloods go to Slytherin, and then everyone else goes to Hufflepuff. Yeah. Everyone that isn't those things.
Yeah. Which is funny because she in other interviews since has said like I would have been sorted into Hufflepuff.
Yeah. Well, she says that when you like, even with like Pottermore, I remember I was just so happy to get to dive into what Hufflepuff was, because like as an adult, I was like, I would 100% be Hufflepuff.
Yeah.
I just was like, that would definitely be my house. I knew it would be. Figured it'd be either that or Gryffindor, but especially because Hufflepuff is a female founder, I was like, I'm gonna be in that house. And I just am not. I mean, I think it's important to be intelligent, but I'm not. I know I'm not a Ravenclaw. So it's just so weird to me that I'm like, you couldn't give one trait. Like Slytherin, you always just use the word cunning. Yes. Or like that she always uses that word. So I'm like, you couldn't have just like done the whole like hard workers bit again. Because what was it before? Like unafraid of toil.
Yes, unafraid of toil.
Yeah. It sounds like Hufflepuff is just the house of like the softies and the emotional ones.
Yeah.
And, you know, the ones that have ADHD.
Yeah.
The ones that like can't focus.
And the potheads.
No, boo. Not on this pod. Okay. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that I reject that notion.
We're rejecting.
Yeah, we're rejecting it. But basically, the Sorting Hat, like, its message is like, we're strongest when united. Stand together rather than divided. And if you don't stand together, like Hogwarts will crumble, basically, and we're all doomed.
Yeah.
So he finishes the song.
Woo.
He finishes his song, and then the sorting begins. I'm not really going to say much about the sorting. It happens.
It's funny. It's just funny that there's two first years that get named, and the first one is Abercrombie.
I know. Wasn't that weird?
It's almost too. I don't like how real world that name was. I wish she'd used another name. It pulled me out immediately because all I thought of was Abercrombie and Fitch.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, me too, obviously. That's what I associated it with. Yeah. But yeah, I wonder why Abercrombie was the...
And it's not like, by the time she wrote this, Abercrombie was a known, like, store.
Yeah.
This is like 2003, maybe? Yeah. Something like that?
Yeah.
People knew... Abercrombie existed. So I didn't like that she chose that name.
Yeah, I don't know why that was the name that she was like set on choosing.
It was weird. But he's a Gryffindor. Shout out to him.
Yep, he's a Gryffindor. Of course, the one that Harry was like kind of noticing ends up being a Gryffindor.
Yeah.
Of course. So after the sorting finishes, Dumbledore stands up and Harry admits to himself that he is nonetheless happy to see Albus standing up there ready to make his speech, just because it's the way things always have been.
Mm-hmm.
There's like, comfort in seeing Dumbledore, which I think a lot of people feel that way when they see him. I love that Dumbledore never makes a speech before they eat. He always lets them eat their food. Yes. Like, I just love it because I'm like, good. Yeah. Correct. None of us want to listen to your speech right now, bro. Yeah. He's the best. He was like, what does he say? He was like, there's always a good time for words, but this is not it. Or it's like, that is essentially that. So they're talking about the hat song while they're eating, just kind of being like, that was a little crazy, wasn't it? And Sir Nicholas is like, Nearly Headless Nick is like, oh no, I've heard the hat make predictions like that before. And then he's like, well, I mean, the hat lives in Dumbledore's office, so like it has to be in the loop of what's going on. And like we've talked about, is like obviously the hat is somewhat sentient before, but I'm just like, you're telling me that hat just sits there all year, like listening? Like, I'm like, it has to be able to like shut down or like hibernate or something.
Sleep mode.
Give the hat a break. Yeah. It's like Isabelle in Animal Crossing. Give her a break.
It's so funny.
You know what I'm saying?
I was so annoyed that he was like, oh yeah, I've heard him do this before. But then they never were like, in what when? Because that could have probably given you a clue as to what's going on this year. But they didn't find that interesting at all.
Once again, it's like whenever Hermione says something and they're like, anyways.
It's just crazy to me because like as a person, I find like I was a history major for a month in college, LOL. But
for a month?
For 1 month. So I find history very fascinating. And all I would do is want to know the history of Hogwarts. And so I would be.
Why wouldn't you?
And Sir Nicholas would be like this, girl. Me and the Fat Friar, like this.
Oh yeah. We would always be chatting up the Fat Friar. Yeah. Well, Nick agrees with you, Adam, because he is so annoyed with Ron specifically that he just gets up and moves to another seat. He actively removes himself from this discussion.
Ron, you're a prefect. Learn how to eat like a goddamn adult. Jesus.
Yeah. So after everyone finishes eating, Dumbledore does indeed make his speech. And his speech consists of telling the first years that the forest is out of bounds and reminding the older students of this as well. Mr. Filch has asked him to remind everyone that magic is not permitted in the hallways in between classes. And I was like, how would you even keep track of that? It was just, if you see someone, good luck, Filch. People are going to be casting spells in the hallways. Good luck. Professor Grubbly Plank is back.
School.
I know. I'm just like, they're going to do it in the hallways. Anyway.
It's the magic equivalent of like when we were at LaSalle and you weren't allowed to like hold hands if you were dating someone in the hallways or whatever. It's going to happen. We're all hormonal.
It's going to happen. Yeah. Professor Dumbledore does confirm that Will is back teaching Care of Magical Creatures, and he shares that Umbridge is here as the new Defense Against the Dark Arts professor. So as Dumbledore starts to talk about Quidditch tryouts, he is cut off by did you like cringe?
I cringed so hard when this happened. Ugh.
He is cut off by Umbridge doing her and she's apparently stood up to speak, but you can't tell because she's that short.
That's really funny. That's very funny.
Great. It's a great bit. And also, I just have to say that nothing brings me more joy than how much Minnie hates Professor Umbridge.
It's the best part of this book.
Every time,
yes,
it is the best part of this book. Every time it is mentioned how much Minerva hates her, I like grin from ear to ear.
So
like, because you're just like 100% Minerva would hate this bitch.
Because ostensibly they're both people who care about the rules, right? Like Minerva's very like rule based, whatever, and obviously Umbridge is as well. But there's a very different kind of like justice oriented thing with McGonagall.
Yes, Minerva is very much like by the book, by the rules to make sure that everything is like fair and everything it's for like the good of the students. And Umbridge is 100% about power. And it has nothing to do with the good
or the safety.
It's all just about like it's just nothing about that. It's all about power and like control.
I mean, when you've written this many characters at this point, at some point you're going to have to go back to like some like we're gonna have to start splintering off from the tree of like one type of character, and so you have to create division. So it's cool that there are specificities between like characters that you would think would be similar but like are very different people.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I love this clash between them. It's like it's 100% one of the best parts of this book. So Albus hears her little throat clear and like handles it really well, honestly, and just kind of like defers to her and sits down and is just like, yeah, I would love nothing more than to listen to you.
The best part is like the Albus's reactions whenever anything happened are just never what you would expect. That's what's so like cool,
he's just
funny
so
about his character. So it's
just like, oh, you want to speak? Go ahead.
My God, please don't let me take up the time. I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Please go ahead. Yeah, it's just like you're never going to be able to say that he was unpleasant to you.
Right. Or that
you will never be able to say he was.
Yeah. You can't like throw him off his game because he'll just be like, great. He's improv king, honestly. Improv king.
He is improv king.
Second City's own Albus Dumbledore.
He studied at Second City. So she starts talking and very quickly it just it sounds like she's like reading something off of a script. Like she's just essentially memorized something that the ministry has given her to say out loud. And Hermione is probably one of the few people that's like really listening, like intently to her.
Active listening. We love that.
Yes, active listening, which of course she is. Hermione's just she's the best. So Dumbledore claps for her once she's done. And he says that it was most illuminating. And I just love that the word illuminating was chosen. And Hermione essentially like says exactly what I was thinking. Because Hermione's like, yeah, wow, that was indeed illuminating. And Ron's like,
I thought it was boring.
That just sounded like a bunch of bullshit to me. Yeah. What are you talking about? And she was like, oh no, there were some very clear, like intentional statements hidden within the waffle of all the rest of what she was saying.
Yeah.
And so she was like, basically, the ministry is like trying to have more control at Hogwarts. That's clear from what she said in that speech. So after they're dismissed, Dumbledore, kind of picks up his train of thought after Umbridge finishes talking, to which no one really knows, like, if they should clap or not.
Yeah, everybody's like,
yeah, it's like the same thing of like, oh wait, oh, she's done. Oh, should we clap? Well,
it's funny because nobody knows that she's from the ministry because she's not. She never.
No, they didn't really mention.
She doesn't say like, I'm a former Ministry of Magic official. Blah 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 blah.
Although, wait, actually, I think she did say in her speech. She said something along the lines of like the ministry.
She talks about the ministry, but she was. I felt like she was like purposefully.
Like not saying that,
like transparent or opaque enough that nobody would know that she was a part of the ministry. More than just like,
right.
The ministry is an important role of government.
Right.
There are three branches of the American government.
Yeah, the first sentence is, the Ministry of Magic has always considered the education of young witches and wizards to be of vital importance.
Right.
I hope so. Girl, what are you saying? Like, it's just like, yeah. What?
Why are we talking about the Ministry of Magic?
Wow. Anyway. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, I don't think I want to say anything else about her speech, but yeah, basically they're trying to have more control over Hogwarts.
The ministry coming.
Is interfering. Yeah, the ministry's coming. The ministry is interfering at Hogwarts. Mm-hmm. So they're dismissed from the feast, and then Hermione's like, oh, we have to get the first years. It's time. We have to take care of them. To which Ron's like, hey, yo, midgets. And I was like, what are we doing?
He's so stupid.
And I was like, this is another moment where I'm like, I don't even take issue with Ron.
Dumbledore.
Joe, what
Albus.
are you doing? No, I was gonna say Joe. Like, I'm just like, why did you write that word? Why is that word in your dictionary? But the issue that I do have with this dynamic of Ron and Hermione being prefects, which we're about to see play out in this book as it goes on, is that Hermione is the only one that's actually prefecting, and Ron isn't doing anything.
Who are the other five prefects, or the four prefects in Gryffindor?
I don't know. We don't know.
So weird.
Yeah. It's just weird that, like, because I'll be the first one to say that, like, Ron has some really lovely qualities about himself. Like, I think he's like he's a pretty good people person. Obviously, he's like kind of awkward around like Fleur Delacour or whatever. But like, I was like, he's not unliked. Like, people, he's not disliked.
Yeah.
Like, people like him. So I just am like, he could be like, there are positive things about Ron that you could utilize in the writing of this book when he's a prefect. And I just feel like she never does that. Like, she just truly makes him essentially the prefect that isn't doing anything, and then Hermione's doing the work of both of them, and I'm just like, I don't like this.
I feel like also by this book is when she really starts to just be like, Ron is the funny one. Because, like, they've definitely set that up for the films, and by now the films are, like, coming out at the same time as these books.
Yeah.
So she has to be like, funny guy Ronald the funny man.
It's just weird. It's weird because I think maybe just because there's Harry and Hermione and Ron, it's like Harry's very fully fleshed out and Hermione is very fully fleshed out, but I feel like Ron has kind of been like forgotten a little bit. Just for whatever, because he's like the third friend or whatever. I don't really know, but I'm just like, I think she could have, there are qualities about Ron that are positive that she could have had help him in being a prefect, and she just doesn't do it at all.
I would have loved, actually, this is not the book that she wrote, right? And this is probably not even this series in general, because the series is more focused on Harry. But like, if we were doing a character study, it would have been cool for like Ron to have really been able to be a prefect, really, like it really would have come naturally to him. And then
that's what I'm saying.
Hermione maybe struggle and then be like, I don't know why it's not, I feel like I'm having a hard time. Like, it would have been cool to like kind of put that dynamic in there, but she's not interested in those kind of like specific nuanced character decisions.
It's just weird to be like the Mirror of Erised, to be like, Ron really wants to stand out and he wants to like make a name for himself. And then like he essentially has his first opportunity and he just like isn't interested in it at all.
Yeah.
In the end. And I'm like, I don't believe that. I feel like he would want to do a good job.
It's in his Mirror of Erised. Yeah. It's his heart's desire.
So I just that doesn't track for me. Yeah. So I reject that. So they go off to do their prefect duties, and Harry walks back to the Gryffindor common room all by himself, and he reaches the portrait hole before realizing that he doesn't know the password.
This man is acting like he's like doesn't have friends. I just am like, go make friends.
You have other people you know. Yeah, Neville was right there. Up. They were sitting with Neville. How did he not walk with Neville? He honestly
was probably walking with Neville, and Neville was talking to him the whole time, and he was ignoring him. This is definitely what happened.
Or Neville was like walking behind, like saw Harry leave and like was trying to catch up with him the whole time, but Harry just like didn't no awareness. So Harry and Neville walk into the common room after Neville mentions that the password is Mimbulus Mimbletonia, the name of his
very
plant.
Convenient. How extremely convenient.
So convenient. And Harry just makes a beeline for the fifth year boys dormitory. Mm-hmm. So as soon as Harry, here we go again. So as soon as Harry comes in, there's another moment where Dean and Seamus immediately stop talking as Harry enters the room. And the thing that made me sad about this, Adam, was that Harry even like kind of second guesses his intuition for a moment. Like he's like, maybe I'm being paranoid. So he's like, hey guys.
Yeah.
I was just like, oh, that is the worst, where you're like, you have that gut feeling that someone was just like shit talking you, but you're like, no, I'm just being paranoid. It's okay. Like, hey guys, what's going on? Like, and then sure enough, Dean's like, oh, hi. Hey, nice to see ya. Yeah, Seamus had kind of a rough summer. Like, I'm good, but Seamus, not so much. And then Seamus is like real weird. He's like, just like making a meal out of like going through his stuff or whatever he's trying to do. And Harry's like, oh, what happened? And then Seamus is like, my mom didn't want me to come back. I can't do Jim Dale's is better. Me ma'am. He says like me ma'am. Me ma'am didn't want me to come back. I cannot do an Irish accent to save my life. I would have to learn. Like I genuinely don't know how to do one. His mom didn't want him to come back to school, which Harry's like, what in the why? Why not? And Seamus is like, well, because of you. Which I was like, that's not what we're doing. We're not doing that. We're not saying my mom didn't want me to come back to school because of you, Harry.
This is still someone you have to like be in a dormitory with for the next like 9 months.
It was just weird that he said it that way. Didn't you think that was weird? I was like, no, it's not because of Harry. It's because she's believes what the ministry is saying in the paper, basically. Yeah. And she like doesn't trust Dumbledore, and she doesn't believe Harry, but like to just be like, well, because of you.
Right.
I was like, girl, no. So
unless the thing that they haven't said in the Daily Prophet is that there's like a conspiracy that Harry killed Cedric.
Oh, and that's why his mom is like, maybe. But yeah,
I feel like we would have. I feel like they would have. She would have like written that in.
There's no way that the ministry was like, we think Harry killed Cedric.
I feel like Cedric's death was swept under the rug, because then there will be too many questions about the Triwizard Tournament.
Yeah, I agree. So,
because that's the thing about the Triwizard Tournament, because there's a history of people dying in the Triwizard Tournament. You could just write it off by being like, oh, we tried our best to make sure no one would die, like, and then listen. It's just that's what happens.
And it still happened. So now we're never doing it again.
Yep. Oh well.
We let a 14-year-old compete, but we're not going to mention that.
Right.
Oh, 12-year-old based on Rita's article.
Right. He was 12. Right.
So Seamus elaborates by saying it's because of him and Dumbledore, and just that his mother doesn't believe Harry and she thinks Dumbledore's losing it. And then Harry's like obviously very upset by this, to which Seamus observes this and is like, well, what did happen? Can you tell us? No one really knows what happened, which I'm like, no, Dumbledore told you what happened last year. So like, if you're trying to get Harry to confirm what Dumbledore said, maybe ask that question rather than just being like, what happened? So what did happen actually? So what can you tell me? To which Harry does not respond well to.
No.
And he's like, well, why don't you just read the prophet? Why doesn't your mom just read the prophet? Just listen to your mom. Oh, and then Seamus gets defensive of his mother.
Right, which of course, I mean.
And then Harry's like, well, I'm going to call out your mom because she doesn't believe me, and what I'm saying is the truth. That's what really happened. So I don't know what you want me to say. To which Ron comes in and is like, what's going on? And then Seamus is like, he's having a go at my mom. And Harry's like, yeah, I'm having a go at your mom because she thinks I'm a liar. And Ron's like, oh, this is awkward.
Oh, God.
And then he just like randomly pulls out that like he's a prefect, like to shame. He's like, well, I'm a prefect, buddy. So don't cross me.
Yeah, well,
don't cross me and my friend.
Because Neville and Ron are both like, yeah, we believe Harry.
Yeah.
And then Seamus,
Neville,
like,
Dean.
Yeah.
Yeah, Dean's like, well, because Harry's like, does anyone else have a problem with me? And Dean's like, my parents are muggles, so they don't even know. I knew
they don't know how
it
to
was better
spell
to just
wizard,
like not
girl.
even tell them. So yeah, he's like, I haven't mentioned it. Strategically did not mention it to my parents that any of this is happening. And then Neville's like, my mom or my gran says that the Daily Prophet is
correct,
the one that's like lost it, and we believe Dumbledore and we believe Harry, and which I was like, Harry, you do not deserve Neville.
Truly,
you do not deserve him. Neville is such a good friend. So I was like mad about that I was like, you left the Great Hall without walking with Neville. He's kept trying to catch up to you the whole time.
Calling your name and you're ignoring him.
Yeah. Because you're like spiraling internally. Ugh. So I was mad about that. I was just like, you don't deserve Neville. He's so wonderful. But yeah, both Ron and Neville are backing Harry. And then Dean basically is just like, I don't have a problem with either of you.
Yeah.
Like he's just kind of being Switzerland. And so the chapter ends with Seamus and Harry essentially just being like,
yeah,
silent, giving each other the silent treatment. And then Harry is very upset, and he tries to reassure himself that in the end the public will know that they were telling the truth, but he has the thought of like, how many interactions like this am I going to have before people realize that what I'm saying is true and not made up? Which is just like, that's a lot. It's a lot for a 15-year-old kid to have to be dealing with that pressure and like essentially gaslighting. Yeah. The general public is just gaslighting him.
I feel bad because I don't know. I don't totally blame I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this.
From his perspective, like believing that.
Because like
stuff.
All you had the end of the year, Cedric died. Dumbledore says more broad strokes of what happened, that Voldemort came back and killed Cedric, but not like specifics of how it happened or any, like they don't know anything about Barty Crouch Jr. They don't know, like there's like a whole kit and caboodle that was not explained to the students, which is understandable.
Right.
And then you go home for 2 months and are daily inundated with propaganda.
You're a victim of fake news.
Right. And
fake news.
And obviously like it's frustrating because it's Seamus and it's someone who Harry is
always really liked.
Allegedly close to. I mean, like they get along, but they're not like friends.
No,
they're friendly.
I
would say
they're like acquaintances.
But yeah, I mean, it's a bummer. It feels like it reminds me of how Ernie Macmillan was in book 2. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, with that whole thing.
Yeah.
It
feels like that all over
Justin
again.
Finch Fletchley, who we will never hear about again.
Not a character. Goodbye.
He never is mentioned.
Ever again.
I don't think ever. Mm-mm. I'm trying to think, in this book, are they ever in the greenhouse together? Because they have... I hope I'm proven wrong. I hope we get Justin Finch Fletchley back, but I don't think we will.
Yeah.
I don't know.
But...
You're like, he's a victim of, because obviously he himself is also 15. So it's like at that age where you just kind of listen to whatever your parents say. Yeah. You have your parents' beliefs, basically, because you don't know any better. To you.
Yeah. I mean, it sucks. It sucks. It's a bummer. I wish... I like the way that this structure of the book is set up, where Harry has to be like in a very low position. So then like Dumbledore's army kind of like is the turnaround point, and like things start to get better because Harry takes action. Harry decides he's going to take action on his own. So but yeah, you have to do a lot of work to set all that up. So this is the work that sucks. Is like having to read like
I feel like I understand why Harry is like so frustrated, and I understand like why he has a short fuse. But when Seamus did ask him, like, well, what really did happen? I do feel like there maybe was an opportunity in that moment that Seamus might have believed him if Harry would have said, I don't want to go into full details, but like what Dumbledore said was true. And it was, but of course, it's just, you have to be like an adult to think of a response like that. Like I would not have had a response like that when I was 15.
Because you immediately feel
There's
like
just no way.
You need to defend yourself.
Yeah, you get defensive because he is having to constantly defend something that was very traumatic that happened to him. Just like, yeah, it's really tough. It's tough.
At the end of the day, this is all the Ministry's fault.
It is. The blood is on your hands, Cornelius.
Right. Why did anyone agree to the Triwizard Tournament coming back? Period.
Yeah, girl. Great question. We'll never know.
Well, that wraps up this chapter. Next week, we will be reading chapter 12 called Professor Umbridge. I wonder what that'll be.
I wonder what that's about.
You can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you find your podcasts, as well as video versions on the Ampliverse YouTube channel and on Spotify. As always, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so that we can get a perfect Newt score, 5 stars only, or else you will be the victim of misinformation. Da da da!
Fake news.
Fake news. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HPAnxious or YouTube and TikTok at The Ampliverse. We are hosted on Anchor and recorded on Zencastr, so thank you to the both of them and are a proud member of The Ampliverse. Please check them out at theampliverse.com. Thank you, Ari.
Thanks, Adam.
And as always, Nox.